Hey guys, Luke here on Sean's channel. Today I'm really excited because I'm bringing back my Yubel deck. Yubel is a great Fiend deck. I think it's definitely a lot of fun. It can be a bit tricky to master, however, you can take this very far if you learn to master it and play it well. The reason why I'm updating this is of course because of the new ban list. Although Yubel wasn't hit directly, it gave me the freedom to actually invest into some of the Fiendsmith stuff, so now we're going to be experimenting with a little bit of that. Because Fiendsmith is just a great little engine that I think really works well with Yubel. Don't get me wrong, the deck still functions well enough on its own, but it's also nice to have an extra little engine that's able to help us build better boards and extend if we ever get stuck. So without further ado, let's get into it. This is Yubel. Starting things off, we're under one copy of Yubel. For those of you who don't know, the basic idea behind Yubel relies solely on the one battle trick, in the sense that if you have Nightmare Pain up on the field, your opponent has to attack your Yubel monsters, and Yubel cannot be destroyed by battle, and with the help of Nightmare Pain, any battle damage that you will receive is then inflicted onto your opponent instead. So the whole point of the deck is bring out these high level monsters with 0 attack and 0 defense, so that you need to force your opponent to attack into them, so that they will be inflicted battle damage instead, and that's how you basically win from there. You only need the one copy of Yubel though. You mostly bring her out off of the destruction of Spirit of Yubel, and she's able to summon herself from pretty much anywhere if Spirit is destroyed, so you don't need to be running multiple copies of her. One is more than enough. One copy of TY Incarnate. This is the monster you bring out off of Yubel's effect if Yubel is destroyed by a card effect. That's not her own. TY Incarnate is just great for extension, especially if we were bringing it out off of the effect of Nightmare Throne. He has a pretty good end phase effect where he's able to wipe the board of all monsters on the field if she was special summoned this turn. However, most of the time you don't use that effect. You're mostly just using her as a bit of extension for your proper Yubel plays. So you don't need to be running any more than just one copy. We run 3 copies of Spirit of Yubel. I've seen some people play it at 2, especially if they're going heavy with the other engines in the deck. But I wanted to primarily focus on Yubel and just use the Fiendsmith and the Unchained engines as kind of like little extenders, more so than anything else. So I think 3 copies is optimal for this build right here. She has the same similar effects as Yubel itself, where it cannot be destroyed by battle, and also you take no damage from battles involving the card. But what's really great about Spirit of Yubel is that when she is special summoned, you can add to your hand or set one spell or trap from your deck that mentions Yubel, so most of the time you're going with Nightmare Pain. What's also great about Spirit of Yubel is that you can actually use this effect during the battle phase, that when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand, which is great because, as I already mentioned, cannot be destroyed by battle and you take no damage from battles involving this card. So it's a good little trick to have in the hand in case your back's up against the wall. Also, as I previously mentioned, if she's destroyed, she's able to bring out the original copy of Yubel from either your hand, deck, graveyard, or banishment. So I think Spirit of Yubel is definitely mandatory to be running at 3 in the deck. We run 3 copies of Samsara D Lotus. This is the best combo starter for the Yubel side of the deck, because you can tribute this card and special summon one Yubel monster from your deck, which you're going to be bringing out your Spirit of Yubel in order to get your combos playing from there. So I definitely think it's really important to be maximizing your copies of Samsara D Lotus in this deck. I opted to go for only the 1 copy of Gruesome Squirmer. Don't get me wrong, it's a really good card and it works well as an easy extender. However, the main combo line, where you're searching Squirmer off of your Nightmare Pain, means that you're almost always going to be searching this card anyways, more so as part of an extension as opposed to a starter. So we really don't need to run any more than 1 copy of it in the deck. I think 1 is more than enough. Going into the Fiendsmith side of things, 3 copies of Fiendsmith Engraver. For this deck, Engraver is definitely the best starter in order to go for your Fiendsmith engine, because with Engraver what you're able to do is that if he's in your hand, you're able to discard it in order to add 1 Fiendsmith spell trap from your deck to your hand. So you're going to be most likely searching Fiendsmith's Tract, and then from there you're using Fiendsmith's Tract to search out Lurrie, to discard it in order to special summon him out, and then you're off to your races with the Fiendsmith stuff from there. So I think it's definitely really important to run Engraver at 3 copies. I wouldn't run it at any less. We can get away with 2 copies because most time you're going to be using Engraver to go for your Wave High King Caesar play, which only needs 2 level 6 Fiend monsters in order to go into him. However, since Engraver works as a starter within himself, I do think it's important to maximize him out at 3 copies. We run 1 copy of Lacrima the Crimson Tears. She is always treated as a Fiendsmith card, and when she is normal or special summoned, you can send 1 Fiendsmith card from your deck to the graveyard, except for herself of course. But honestly, most of the time the best card to send to the graveyard off of Lacrima's effect is going to be Fiendsmith Engraver himself, just because it's a good way to get some graveyard setup and Engraver is able to special summon itself out from the graveyard also. So I do think it's really important to run her at the 1 copy. I wouldn't run her at any more than 1. The 1 copy is all you need. 1 copy of Fabled Lurrie. Lurrie is the card that you're going to be searching off of Fiendsmith's Tract, because when Tract resolves, you're going to need to discard a card. So you're going to be discarding your copy of Fabled Lurrie, who has the mandatory effect that if this card is discarded to the graveyard, special summon it. So it's a great way to get a light fiend on the field as quickly as possible to go for your Fiendsmith's Requiem plays. 1 copy is all you need. We run the tiniest of Unchained package in this deck. Literally just 2 cards in the main deck and 2 cards in the extra deck. But it's all you really need in order to consistently bring out Unchained Soul of Rage onto the field. So I think it's still really important to run 1 copy of Unchained Soul of Sharvara. You can search him off of Unchained Soul Lord of Yama. And what's also great about Sharvara is it has a quick effect to target 1 fiend monster on the field and destroy it to special summon him out. So not only is he good as an extension, but he can also be a good way of popping some of your own fiends if they are subjected to an imperm, or even if you want to extend your Yubel plays. So 1 Sharvara I think is absolutely great. If you want to go down the route of just making this a Yubel Fiendsmith sort of deck, that's absolutely fine, but I still think having that small Unchained package is still really good for the deck. We also run 2 copies of Dark Beckoning Beast. When this card is normal summoned, you can add from your deck to your hand 1 spell or trap that mentions the Sacred Beast monsters, which of course is going to be your opening of the Spirit Gates, which is a fantastic card for getting some great extension, and also reviving some of your important 0 attack and defense fiends from the graveyard. So Dark Beckoning Beast is of course really important for that. But also the fact that during your main phase you can normal summon 1 fiend monster with 0 attack and defense in addition to your normal summon / set with Dark Beckoning Beast on the field, I think is really important because it's great to go for your Link 2s as quickly as possible. So 2 copies of Dark Beckoning Beast I think is great for the deck. 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. I think this is one of the most powerful hand traps in the game, so I wanted to be running it here. And we also run 3 copies of Nibiru, just because Nibiru is a fantastic hand trap in this deck specifically. Most just because if your opponent is popping off with a bunch of their monsters and you're able to Nibiru them having a high attack point monster face up on the field is really great for us when we're playing Yubel, because if we're able to get our Yubel plays to pop off with Nightmare Pain on the field, we're able to use Yubel to attack into their Nibiru token and inflict a whole lot of damage from there. So I think Nibiru is great in this deck specifically, but you can probably side it out depending on what the matchup is. Going on to spells now, 3 copies of Nightmare Throne. When this card is activated, you can take 1 fiend monster with 0 attack and defense from your deck and either add it to your hand or destroy it. So it's a great way of searching some of our starters such as Samsara D Lotus or even Dark Beckoning Beast and getting them directly into your hand. But also the fact that it's able to just directly pop Spirit of Yubel from the deck in order to immediately go into your Yubel plays, I think is also pretty good. That's not all this card does. It also has a really good extender effect that once per turn, if a face-up Yubel monster you control leaves the field by card effect, you can add to your hand 1 Yubel monster from your deck, graveyard, or banishment whose original level is 1 higher or lower than one of those monsters, and then you can special summon it ignoring your summoning conditions. So that's really great if we pop Spirit of Yubel, because not only is Spirit of Yubel going to bring out Yubel onto the field, but you can also trigger Nightmare Throne in order to bring out Yubel to her Incarnate. So you have 2 bodies on the field immediately for some great plays. So 3 copies of Nightmare Throne I think is really important. 2 copies of Nightmare Pain. Nightmare Pain is the main card that we're going to be searching off of Spirit of Yubel. It's honestly such an essential card in this deck. I see a few decks running it at 1 copy, but I just think that it's too important that if it does get removed, we definitely want to have a bit of a backup. So I like to have the extra copy. I think 2 is the optimal ratio. We run 2 copies of Fiendsmith's Tract. With this card you're able to add 1 light fiend monster from your deck to your hand and then discard 1 card. So of course you're going to be using this to search for your Fabled Lurrie, so that you can discard it and then it'll special summon itself. And I think it's really important that we run it at 2 copies because this is the only Fiendsmith spell or trap we run in this deck, and we need at least 1 in the deck itself so we can activate Engraver from the hand and get our Fiendsmith plays to pop off. So 2 copies of Tract I think is ideal. Also run 2 copies of Super Poly. Some people might move this as a side deck option, but honestly, I really like the idea that when Yubel first got her wave of support, the whole premise of it was building the deck around Super Poly, which I thought was really cool. So I didn't want to lose that aspect of the deck. That's why I still keep it in. The reason why I run it at 2 copies as opposed to like a standard 1 copy is because I have a lot of targets for it in the extra deck as well. So I think it's more ideal to run it at 2 copies in the deck. 2 copies of Open the Spirit Gates. This is what we're able to search off of our Dark Beckoning piece. When Open the Spirit Gates is activated, we're also able to add one monster that mentions the Sacred Beast cards. So not only are you able to search Open the Spirit Gates off of Dark Beckoning Beast, but you can also search Dark Beckoning Beast off of Open the Spirit Gates. So it's great little synergy right there, especially for hand advantage. But that's not all this card does. It also has the effect that once per turn you can discard one card and special one Fiend monster with 0 attack and defense from your graveyard, which is absolutely insane, because if you already have a target in the graveyard already, like if you already have a Fiend with 0 attack and defense in the graveyard already, since you discard first, you are able to bring out that discarded monster onto the field, which I think is absolutely fantastic, especially with some Spirit of Yubel plays. I think Open the Spirit Gates is really important to run at 2 copies. Rounding off the spells, we run 1 copy of Call by the Grave and 1 copy of Triple Attacker's Talent. This is a combo deck at the end of the day, so we don't like to get interrupted. These are just good ways to kind of recover. Going into the traps now, we have 1 copy of Abominable Chamber of the Unchained. We only really run this because we're able to set it directly from our deck if Unchained Soul of Sharvara leaves the field. And it does leave the field all the time because we need it as link fodder for our Unchained Soul of Rage material. So we're able to just bring out an Unchained trap and set it directly to the field. I think this is probably the best contender because it's a good way for us to recycle some of the Unchained monsters from the graveyard. I consider some of the other Unchained traps. However, the reason why I didn't run the one that actually pops is because I don't think we run a big enough Unchained package to really utilize any of the other Unchained traps. So I think Abominable Chamber is probably the best option for this deck. And then rounding off the deck, 3 copies of Imperm. Imperm is just a fantastic hand trap. You should definitely run in the main. Going into the extract now, 1 copy of Phantom of Yubel. In order to go into her, all you need is 1 Yubel monster and 1 Fiend monster with 0 attack and defense, which can be special summoned from your X deck by shuffling the above cards from your hand, field and or graveyard into the deck. So she's really easy to bring out. She's a good destruction because she can change a monster effect that your opponent activates to be destroy 1 Yubel monster in your opponent's hand, deck or field, which is a great way for us to get some Yubel plays to go off during our opponent's turn. Phantom of Yubel unfortunately is limited right now, so we can only run her at 1 copy. Some of our Super Poly targets now, we have 1 copy of Yubel the Loving Defender, 1 Mudragon the Swamp and 1 Garura Wings of Resonant Life. I love Yubel the Loving Defender because with Super Poly, all we really need is 1 Yubel monster and then we can use all the effect monster our opponent controls in order to fusion summon them into the 1 copy of Yubel the Loving Defender. She's great, she's essentially a Yubel monster at the end of the day, so it has all the same effect that all of the other Yubel monsters have. But she also has a bonus effect in the sense that when she is fusion summoned, you can burn your opponent for 500 life points for every monster used for her fusion summon. I think it's absolutely great. I love when Super Poly is able to go into a monster that benefits the deck, and especially when it's able to use generic monsters that our opponent controls. So I like to have this ratio going in the X deck. The Fiendsmith fusions now, we have Fiendsmith's Desirae and Fiendsmith Lacrima. Lacrima was unbanned, now limited to 1 copy, so of course we're going to utilize them in the deck. These cards are definitely very essential for your Fiendsmith plays because they're able to be used as great extension, especially Lacrima, because we're able to use it as fodder for our High King Caesar play as well. Definitely run these cards at 1 copy each in your extra deck. Going into the XZs now, of course, as I mentioned a few times already, we run 1 copy of DDD Wave High King Caesar. All it needs is 2 level 6 Fiend monsters in order to go into it. It has the effect that when a spell, trap card, or a monster effect is activated that includes an effect that special summons a monster, you're able to quick effect, detach 1 material from this card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Which is fantastic because that's also not once per turn. So it's almost like having 2 Ash Blossoms on legs right then and there. So I think it's definitely really important that we run it at 1 copy in the deck. It's really easy to bring out thanks to the Fiendsmith engine. We also run 1 copy of Varudras, the final bringer of the end times. Since we run 3 copies of Spirit of Yubel and 1 copy of Yubel herself, we have no problem getting level 10s out onto the field. And I just like having a way to have a spell or trap card negation, one way or the other in any deck. It's very easy for us to have a bunch of monster effect negations in this deck. However, spell and trap negation is something that we really lack a lot of. So I like to have one way of kind of handling that. So I think Bringer of the End Times is definitely the best option to do that. Rounding off the XZs, we also run TY-PHON. Just in case our plays aren't going through, TY-PHON can be a really great going second card. So I like to run it at 1 copy in the extra deck. Going on to the Fiendsmith links now, 1 copy of Fiendsmith's Requiem and 1 copy of Fiendsmith's Sequence. Sequence is really important for us to bring out our Desirae, but Requiem is even more important for us to get our Fiendsmith plays going in the first place. Because in order to go into Requiem, all you need is 1 Light Fiend monster, which can be your Engraver. However, most of the time we're going into them using Fabled Lurries, which we brought out thanks to Fiendsmith's Tract. So I think it's definitely really important to run one copy of each in this deck. So one copy of Requiem, one copy of Sequence. The Unchained links we run is one copy of Unchained Soul Lord of Yama, or one copy of Unchained Soul of Rage. Yama is important because you're able to go into her using just 2 Fiend monsters, so she's definitely a lot easier to go into than Unchained Soul of Rage is. When Yama's brought out, we're able to add one Unchained monster from our deck to our hand, which of course is going to be Sharvara, which is great because we can use the Sharvara for Link Fall in order to go for our Unchained Soul of Rage. But also Yama is there as well, just in case. We can also use her as link material for Rage as well. But I do think it's definitely really important that you run at least a tiny Unchained package in the deck like I do right here. I think this is probably the ideal ratio because I don't want to lean too much into Unchained, but it's still a really powerful engine that I think is worth the run. Especially Unchained Soul of Rage because he basically works as an IP Masquerena, using itself and one of your opponent's monsters. So rounding off the deck, we have 2 really great targets you're able to bring out off of Rage in the form of SP Little Knight and Nightmare Unicorn. These are just fantastic, powerful cards in general, but the fact that we're able to use Unchained Soul of Rage to use one of our opponent's monsters to go into either one of these, I think is just all the better. So I think this is a great way to round off the extra deck. Going into the side deck now, we run 3 copies of Radiant, the multi-dimensional kaiju. Not only is it great because it's a high attack value kaiju that we're able to use to get over some of our opponent's problematic monsters, and then we're able to use Yubel in order to crash into it to inflict 2800 damage to our opponent. But also the fact that it is a dark monster means that it's also good for Nightmare Pain. And also it's a fiend if that ever comes up, where we have 2 kaijus in our hand. We can use one to bring out to our opponent's side of the field and one to our side of the field, and we keep going our link plays from there. So 3 copies of Radiant I think is great for the side. 3 copies of Chaos Hunter I think is really great as well. I was debating either using this or Lancia, but since Malice got hit a little bit more on the ban list and is ever so slowly getting power crept as well, I think Lancia was getting less important. But Chaos Hunter is also very good because it essentially has the same effect as Lancia, but also offers us an extra Dark Fiend body on the field as well. So I think Hunter is a great side deck option also. We run 3 copies of Ash Blossom. It's kind of weird having Ash in the side as opposed to a main deck. However, I just think Nibiru was just a better card to run in the main deck for this, just because Yubel benefits a lot off of Nibiru. But Ash Blossom is still really important because it's able to stop some Mulcharmy plays. So I think it's definitely a better side deck card option in this deck specifically. We run 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. It was between Droplet or Dark Ruler No More as my board breaker for the side deck. But the reason why I went with Droplet is just because with Dark Ruler we're not able to inflict any battle damage to our opponent during the turn it is activated, so it can really be a double-edged sword. But Droplet is very good because we're still able to inflict damage to our opponent, and also it's a quick play spell, so we can also set it to the back row if needs be. So I just think it is the superior choice for the side deck. Then finally rounding us off, 3 copies of Solemn Strike. Strike is my favorite Solemn card. I always like to have it in almost all of my side decks. So that about does it for the deck. Please let me know what you guys think. I'm really happy with the way this deck turned out. I really like the way Fiendsmith wasn't directly hit. Moon was definitely the problem when it came to what needed to go with that last ban list, just because Moon made Fiendsmith playable in any deck, whereas it should really just be used in decks that are capable of utilizing it properly, such as Fiend decks like Yubel. So I'm really glad that we're able to take advantage of it now. If you're interested in building this deck, please be sure to use the affiliate links down in the description below, because if you use those affiliate links, it helps directly support myself and Sean to keep bringing you guys these videos on the channel. Another way you guys can help support the channel is if you can consider becoming a member. We want to give a big shout out to our members, Ronnie Yao, Jojo TCGs, John Cran, Americ Humber, Johnny, and Dragon God 2025. Because your continued support helps myself and Sean to keep bringing you guys these videos consistently. So we of course really appreciate your support for that. But for the rest of you guys, if you can just like the video and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment, it all helps out in the long run. So thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time.